So my brand new game CUFFBUST just launched, and it's got a full custom map editor with Steam Workshop support, so you can create fully custom levels, publish them for the community to play, and host any map that you find as a server to play with your friends. The editor is built by the awesome people over at Warp Digital, and it's designed to be as easy to use as possible, but also robust enough that you can create really advanced and creative levels. In this video, I'm going to try and cover everything that you need to know to create as advanced levels as you would ever want to make. We're going to talk about adding AI characters, creating puzzles and escape routes, different rooms, customizing your level settings like player health, speed, game mode, publishing and editing your levels on the Steam Workshop, and a bunch of other advanced tips that'll help you make the best possible levels. All right, so here we are in game, and we're gonna go ahead, hit the start button, and just go to this map editor button here. So this is gonna be what you're seeing if you're opening this for the first time. We're just gonna create a new map, and then we've got a couple of different templates that we can choose from, and we might add some more templates later on. We've got a blank level and a couple of different islands. So I'm gonna go with the island large here because this is based off of the main game's main level map. So we're just gonna use this one, and we'll call this epic, because this is going to be an epic level. So the first thing that you're going to see when you boot up a new level is going to be this wiki here. And this is a great little bit of information here for you to scroll through and read through, in addition to this tutorial, just to brush up on different features. Or if you've watched through this video and then you want to try and remember one specific thing, you can just check the wiki. It's got a lot of great information and a lot of great GIFs here that'll show you different controls and what they do. So this is really handy, but we're just going to ignore this for now since we are going to be explaining everything in this video. So I'm just going to uncheck show on startup so that doesn't show up anymore. And here we are in the level editor. So the first thing you're going to want to know is just how to move around in the map. So by default, you're going to be pressing keys and nothing's going to happen. So what you're going to do is you're going to hold down your right mouse button, and then that activates movement mode. And the reason for this is because otherwise, when you're selecting objects and stuff, it could get kind of difficult. So you hold down right mouse button, and now you can use the mouse to look around. And then you use W, A, S, and D to move around forward, left, back, and right. You can hold down Shift to speed up the camera movement. And then you can also hold down E to move up or Q to move down. And so that's how we're going to navigate around our level, just sort of this nice fly cam. Along with that, we can fly through objects here so that we can access any part of our level. As well as that, another note on the controls is that all of the level editor keys are rebindable, just like all the main game keys. So if you go into your pause menu with the escape key and go to the controls tab here, you can scroll down and you'll see level editor cores. This is for all the core sort of functionality that you might need. We've got the movement keys as well as the transform shortcuts here. And you can also always reset these if you want to, but if you're familiar with a different piece of software or a different level editor and you want to customize the controls to be more similar to the tool you're familiar with, you can go ahead and do that there. All right, so the next thing that we're going to cover is a full tour of all of the different UI panels that we have at our disposal here. So the first thing we're going to show off is the coolest thing, and that is the inventory. So what we can do is we can hit either tab to open and close the inventory, or we can hit this little icon right down here next to our hotbar. And what we're going to see in here is all of the different objects that we can place inside of our level. And we've got tons and tons and tons of objects here. Pretty much every single object that you can see in the main game is available to use in the level editor. On the left side here, we've got all of our different categories. We've got tools. So this is going to be things like our player spawn point, wall and floor tools, which we'll cover in a little bit, that make it way easier to create different rooms and buildings. Vent tool, which is useful for creating vent systems, as well as some tools here that help us create different spawn zones for AI, which is another section that we're going to cover later on. We've got prefabs. These are groups of objects that are placed in different sort of scenes. We've got entire rooms here, like this garage or this cell tile, this cell block here, or the basketball court. And what you can do is you can easily place these into your level to quickly populate it, instead of having to, with this example, instead of placing down a table and then 4 chairs individually, you could just put in a prefab, and that makes level design really, really quick and easy. We've got all of our item pickups, so all of the different items that you can use in the game, you can also drag into your level from right here. We've got structures, so these are going to be architectural objects that most of these are not destructible, but these are going to be a lot of things like doors, walls, pillars, stairs, things like that that you can use to create your prisons or other buildings. Within that as well, this folder is a drop down, so we can see different categories here for like doors, roof, fences, and all this different stuff here to help make it easier to find what we're looking for. We've also got specific room objects here, which is just a lot of objects that you would place inside of rooms. Wow, crazy, who would have guessed? As well as, you know, natural props here, vents and tunnels, which is another, this will be a whole section that we cover here. We've got linkable actors. So these are going to be objects that are essentially interactive, that you can link together to create custom functionality and puzzles for your escape. So for example, we've got a fan that could be turned off by a lever or a button, or we've got doors that could be opened by a keycard scanner, things like that. We've got characters. This is going to be basically our AI enemy section right here. This is where we've got all of our Gurjantans. We've got snipers, the riot Gurjantans, normal Gurjantans here as well, and then the functionality with the walk points and the walk point master so that we could set up different zones. And again, we'll talk about that in a full section. We've also got decals. These are different basically images that you can paint onto walls, floors, basically anything to help indicate to players that maybe there's a trap ahead, you know, with this this skull and crossbones decal here, or maybe there's a health drop with a bunch of regen items, so you put down the heart, or maybe you've just got a chill zone where you just put a weed leaf and a peace sign or something like that. So this can help you decorate your level. And then lastly, we've got this section for escape routes, and this is where we've got all the different interactive objects that we can place in our level to trigger a player to have escaped from a specific level. As well as that, we've got this search bar here, so whatever section or category here that you have selected, you can search within it. So I could search for grass within the nature category here, or within all, or we also get weed for that. Isn't that fun? You can search for guards or Gurjantans to get the AI characters or the guard tower, and so that just makes it a lot easier to find the objects that you're looking for. So from here, we need to figure out how to place this stuff. It's cool that it's here. These pictures are real pretty, but how do we actually place these? So there's a couple ways that we can do this. First, we can drag and drop any of these objects directly into our level off of the side here, or we can drag them into the hotbar if we're planning on using these objects a lot. So we can drag any of these down here into this hotbar, and you can also overlay these items. So let's say I don't really need this locked gate anymore. I could just drag out this sidewalk on top of it and it'll replace it. And then when we go out of our inventory, we've got all of these items, these objects and interactables at our disposal, and we can just drag them in to our level wherever we like. All right, so the next part of our UI tour here that we're going to go through is the transform panel. So this one's a little bit simpler. It is a collapsible menu on the side here, as well as this outliner. You can collapse these if you don't need them or don't use them much. But what this is going to do is this allows you to adjust how you move and manipulate objects in your level. So let's say we've got this this ceiling fixture here. I should go over the gizmo here as well with this section, but basically with an object selected, we've got these arrows that pop up, and then we can drag this object to place it in the level. By dragging individual arrows, we'll move it on just that singular axis, right? So you got the Z-axis is blue, the Y-axis is green here, and the X is this red one. If you want to move it on all of them, just across the screen, you can just drag it from the very center here, and that's kind of how you can move stuff around. Now, in the transform panel, we can select different movement types. So by default, we have this arrow selected, which is the movement mode. But if we wanted to rotate this object, we can select the rotate mode right here, and now we get this different gizmo where we can select these different axes to rotate our object. And we can rotate it in any of these directions. We've also got the scale option right here, so if we select this, now we can scale our object on these axes to make it different sizes, and by using those, we can place and manipulate stuff in all kinds of ways. So the next thing that you're going to notice up here are these numbers. So these numbers adjust by how much the object is adjusted. So if we were to go over to our transform tool here and we click on this number, you'll see it increase until it goes all the way down to 1. It goes 1, 5, 10, and it loops through this set number of presets here. At 1, if we select the movement mode, it will move this object on the grid in units of 1. So it's going to be a very, very smooth movement. If we go to 5, you'll see there's a little bit more movement in between each. And even going all the way up to like 200, now it makes very large leaps. And the reason for this is so that it's much easier to line up different objects. For example, if we were to move this back to units of 50, the default here, and drag out this metal walkway small, move this into our level here, and then copy it with Control-C and Control-V, and drag it over, you'll see that it lines up pretty well with the other objects. You can see the same thing with like this walkway here. By using the grid snapping, these sizes, it makes it much easier to align our objects, as opposed to having it at like a scale of 1, and then you have to try and manually line it up really carefully. You can do it however you want. Different use cases will make more sense depending on what you're trying to build. And this applies to the rotation and scale as well. So we can rotate in 90-degree increments if we wanted to, or scale at different sizes. And then the last note on that part of adjusting the scale and the scale of the action that you're taking is that no matter what you have selected, if you let's say we go to the move mode here and we're moving in these big leaps here, if we hold down the shift key, that will smooth out the movement. So we can easily smooth the movement if we want by just holding down shift temporarily here. If we hit W, E, and R, that will swap between all of these different modes. So W is going to set it to movement, E is rotation, and R is scale. And again, you can rebind those in the settings menu if you want. All right, so the next panel that we're going to take a look at is the outliner here. So the outliner is a full list of every single object that you have placed in your level. So let's say you're working in your level and you want to try to find a specific actor so that you can start working in that area more, or maybe you just want to delete it. What you can do is you can go up here and search for it. So we could search for the player spawn, for example, and then we can find it in the list. And then, if we wanted to locate it, we can hit F on the keyboard, and that'll bring us directly to that actor. We can also right-click on any object in here and rename it. So if we wanted to rename this player spawn to main spawn, we could do that. So we can rename stuff here to help organize. We can also add objects to different folders to help organize and move things around more quickly. So let's say we had a bunch of rocks that we placed over here in our level. So if we want to add these to a folder now, what we can do is we can go up to the outliner and hit this new folder option here, and then we can rename this, call this rock set. And then we can select all of these. We could select this one down at the bottom, hold down shift on the keyboard, and select this one up at the top. And then we can drag these all into this folder. So now we've got this rock set folder that we can select in the outliner, and then we can move this around wherever we want. Or we can copy and paste it, and now we've copy pasted the entire set. If you want to remove something from a folder, you can just drag it out, just like this. And if you want to delete a folder, you can also do that there. And of course, that also goes for any other object. Let's say we've got this, this exterior wall wide right here. We can right click and delete it. We've also got options here to copy and paste, which also have shortcuts being Control and C to copy and Control and V to paste. Some other useful functionality that we have here is the ability to lock and hide actors. Now, locking and hiding actors does not affect the actual gameplay of your map. It doesn't actually hide them in the level, but it can make editing your level a bit easier. So let's say you had a room and you had a ceiling that was up here, and you had this whole building, and it was getting really difficult to edit stuff because you can't see what's going on inside of here. What you can do is you can select your roof piece, or again, any object in your level, and then click this little eye icon to hide it. So now it becomes easier to see through it. Now this is still in the level, and if we go over to the outliner, we can then unhide it as well. And then we can also lock actors. So let's say these rocks over here, we placed them, we like where they're at, and we don't want them to move ever. We don't want these to be editable so that we don't accidentally edit them in some way that was unintentional. What we can do is we can lock this, and now we are not able to select or move these. We can still select them in the outliner, and we can unlock them so that we now have access to being able to move them and edit them again. But it's just a way to help keep things organized in case your level is starting to get more complex. All right, and then the last UI panel that we've got here is our taskbar. So the different things that we have up here is we've got our exit button, which will notify you if you have any unsaved changes. We've got our save button, which we can hit to just save our current progress on our level, and it's recommended that you hit this button as much as possible. No matter what software or game you're working in, there's always a possibility that it could crash, especially if you're making larger, more advanced levels. So saving often helps prevent any loss of progress. You've also got the wiki button right here, which will pull out the wiki that opens up by default. And we have the publish and settings here as well. And we'll go through this in a full section, but this is where you can customize the settings in game mode, as well as publish your map to the Steam Workshop. And then we also have the play button right here. So when we hit this, it's going to take us into the play mode, which is where it basically runs this level in the exact same way that it would be published to the workshop for other players. It allows us to run around, fight, pick up stuff. It allows us to see all of our AIs in action. And this is what you'll use when you're testing your level. And then you can just hit escape to go back to the editor mode. All right, so in this next section here, we're gonna go over placing actors and building out a bit of our level here, because there are a lot of different objects in our inventory here that have different specific functionalities and different uses, which make it a lot easier and quicker to build your levels. So to start, we're going to take a look at our player spawn here. So CUFFBUST supports up to 10 player lobbies. Because of that, you can have as many player spawns as you want. Now, it's recommended that you have at least 10, but basically the way that it works is that if you have one player spawn, every single player will spawn at that location. If you have 2 player spawns, the players who join your map will be evenly placed between those 2 spawn points. If you have 10 spawn points, then each player will be spawned at one of these points. And if you have more than 10, then players will be spawned at just some random one of them. If you have more player spawns than 10, then none of the player spawn points will get reused. It's also worth noting that when a player goes into spectator mode after completing a match, their drone is going to be spawned in at a random player start location. Another kind of fun pro tip on the player spawns is you can actually rescale these, and by rescaling these, it will actually change the size of the player that is spawned at that spawn point. So you can have a really small player, and you could also have one player spawn at like 4 times the size, which gives you a lot of additional potential for creativity and other random stuff. I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing what people do with that. All right, so for starters here, I'm just going to make sure that I've got a full 10 players. So that'll be a good starting point there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go over the creation process for a normal room. So if you want to add a room, there's a couple ways that you can do this. Firstly, there are room prefabs. If you go to the prefab category here and search for room, you'll find a bunch of really cool template rooms that are already built out that you can fill up with whatever objects you want. So if we were to drag one of these in, we now immediately have this room. It's got lighting, it's got pillars, it's got doors, all of that stuff. And then we've got a handful of different sizes and shapes, as well as there are also some hallways that you can place in your level to make the level creation process a lot quicker. But if you want to create levels more from scratch and that are more custom, I'll show you how to do that because it's really, really cool. So if we go to our tools category here and grab a wall tool, and then we go to our structure area here, we're going to see a lot of objects that interact specifically with the wall tool. So for example, all of these windows, as well as this doorway, that doorway, the curtain here, as well as these doors, all interact with this wall tool. So let me show you how this works. So if we drag a wall tool into our level, we get these arrows here that allow us to rescale this wall. So we could scale it to the same size as this floor here. And then what we can do is we can drag in these other objects. So we've got these windows here, but if we drag it into the wall, it will immediately snap to the wall tool and cut that out as a hole and immediately integrate it into the level just like that. So this allows you to easily create rooms, empty doorways here, windows, and all kinds of stuff like that without having to custom place all of these different objects. And then if we wanted some more walls in this area, we could copy paste the wall here. And if we wanted these doors, we would have to copy paste those as well. So the next thing when it comes to customizing the look of your level is that a lot of objects in the map editor they've got different settings. So for example, the walls and floors here, if I was to go to this wall and right click on it, it's going to bring up this details panel. And we've covered a little bit of this. You know, we've got our copy paste. We can add this object to a new folder or delete it. We've also got the location settings here that we can change, as well as scale and rotation. But we also have some additional customization. So each side of this wall can have a different texture, can have a different material. So we could have a bathroom wall on this side, and gives us these bathroom tiles, and then on this side we could set this to be orange. Maybe we want this to be an orange wall, or we want it to be a black wall. We could do whatever we want with this, and so that makes it really easy to customize the look and feel of your level. And you can do the same thing with floors. So I could take this floor, right click it, and since the floors have both an upper side and a lower side, if I was to copy paste this and turn this into a ceiling, what you'll see is we can right click here, and for the ceiling material, we could set this to, let's say, this wood material like that. And then for this floor, we could set it to maybe this carpet right here. Another example of a object that has different customizability options are doors. So both single doors and double doors can be right clicked, and then you can change the type of door that you have. So we've got wood, we've got weak metal, we've got strong metal, we've got different types of doors that you see in the main game, and you can customize these in the map editor as well here. All right, so next we're going to populate this with some prefabs. So like we said earlier, we've got different prefabs that we can easily put into our level to help populate it. So what we could do is we could just grab these, drag them into the level, and place them wherever we think makes sense to help decorate it. Put some of these over here. Maybe there's a storage area on this side. It's also worth noting that pretty much every object that you see in the level editor has the same functionality that it does in game. So for example, these barrels are destructible, as well as these crates, and they drop items when you break them. You know, for example, with this prefab over here, this kitchen table, this cake, the pan, the donut, the spoon, these are all pickups that you can pick up and use when you go into play mode. So example, pick up the cake, throw it, eat some pills, grab a pan, break a crate, and we're rolling. All right, so next I'm going to show off a couple of interactable items that have some specific use cases that you might want to add to your level when you're building. One of those was the doors that we talked about, these normal opening doors, but there's also some other door types that are pretty useful. One of the main ones that's really useful is the cell doorway. So this object is specifically programmed to open when a round starts, in the same way that the cell doors open in the main level. So you might put all of your players behind a bunch of these doorways here. See, so we can copy these by left clicking, holding down Shift, Control C, Control V to duplicate these, and drag them down. And now all of these cell doors start here. They'll be closed, and then once all the players have loaded in, they will go ahead and open up. There are some other fun objects that you could add to your level, like speakers. You can put these around the prison so that any player who uses the intercom system, which is another object that you can add in, so you could put these in here, and then you could place in the intercom, for example, on let's put it on one of these desks. Actually, that seems like a pretty smart thing to do. We could put this over here, and now this will be interactive, and players' voices will be emitted across all of these speakers that we've placed in. And there's a whole bunch of different objects that you can explore through that have different functionality that's based on the functionality in the game. You know, you've got the fence gate right here that can only be opened with the bolt cutters or bombs and guns and stuff like that if you can break the locks. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can play around with. All right, so next we're going to talk about vents and tunnels. So if we go to the vents and tunnels section here, we're going to see a handful of options. So we'll start off with tunnels, since they're pretty straightforward. And we'll just drag some of these into our hotbar. The way that tunnels work is that you can drag them into your level, and if you drag them onto a floor tool, then it will automatically cut a hole in the floor tool and give you this tunnel that goes down. This is kind of your tunnel entrance point. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this by the edge of our wall and make this a point that we could dig out of. It's a little weird that somebody has dug through the carpet, but you know, we're breaking out of prison. We got to do whatever works. So with that right there, we can then go ahead and put another tunnel on the opposite side. And with this rotated, we can then align the two right here. So now we've got this point here where a player can dig underneath this wall and outside of our building. And we could drag in a shovel as well. We go over here, we can grab this shovel, and now we can start digging just like in the main game. Dig on out, hop out, and boom. Wow, what an escape. So what I'm going to do real quick first here is I'm just going to extend this room a little bit. I'll make another room on the other side here. All right, so I've just created this little room here, and now we're going to link this room to the other one using some vents. So let's go and grab our vent tool. We're going to grab a vent cover and a couple of these other vent pieces to show off. So if I went over here and I drag this vent tool, it's going to snap to the wall just like the doors and windows do. And now what we can do is we can extend the length of it here. We can then also add in these other different types of junctions here. So for example, we've got this 90-degree angle that we could place down here. We could put in another angled piece, maybe have it kind of loop around a little bit. We've got these angled pieces in case you want to have your vent ramp upwards. And now we have a vent system. And then what we can do is we can add vent covers on either side as well. And then these will be interactive for things like screwdrivers, bolt cutters, things like that. All right, so now we're in play mode here. We can grab the screwdriver that I put down, and we can unscrew the vent cover, crawl through the vents, get to the other side here, punch the cover off, and now we have arrived in this other room where we can escape. Oh my gosh. All right, so with that, you now have a lot of the knowledge needed to create a basic level. But I want to go beyond just creating basic levels here and get into some of the more advanced functionality. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is interactive and linkable objects. So object linking is where you're going to start being able to create some really, really interesting functionality and interactive elements for your level. So the first example that we're going to do is we're going to add a fan that can be turned off that's blocking this vent. This is something that we have in the main game in a couple areas. So what we could do is we could throw this spinning fan in, and now we've got this fan here and it's blocking our way. But we can add functionality to turn it off. So there are a lot of different ways that we can link to things like powered actors like this fan, or things like doors, sliding doors, garage doors, things like that. We've got things like buttons, like these buttons here. We've got breakers. We've also got these levers, as well as things like ID card readers, like this one right here. And so if you want to turn off powered objects like this fan, or like sliding doors, garage doors, things like that, you can use any one of these objects that has the left side puzzle piece in the linkable actors part of the inventory here. So if we were to drag these out, for example, we've got this lever, we've got an ID card scanner, which requires use of an ID card to use. We've got this one, which is just a basic lever that can allow multiple players to pull the lever at the same time to open up a certain area. The breaker lever, so we could put some of these up here. We've got this valve handle that requires placing a valve on it first. And we've got just a basic button. And so now if we want to link a certain one of these objects to interact with our fan over here, all that we need to do is right click on it, and then we have first and second linked actor. And so what we could do is we could select, we've got a handful of different options here. You know, we could have this button turn off the lights, or we could have it turn off our fan, which is the goal. And so now we'll see this dotted line leading to the actor that it is linked with. All right, so now you can see we can open up this cover here, and then we press this button, and now our fan is going to turn off, allowing us to walk through. We can also link these other objects as well if we wanted to. For example, we've got the ID card scanner and the fan breaker. So I'm just going to link all of these to show this off. And now I'm going to show you some of the other things that are required here. So for example, for this sewer valve here, we need the actual valve handle. This is something that players would need to place on that to use it. For the ID card scanner, we need the Johnson ID card. And so the other fun thing that we can do here to make this a little bit more advanced is that we can link breakers to this door lever. What we can do is we can right click on these breakers, select door lever, and now these are linked to this lever, and we can have as many of these as we like. We can have it require 5 breakers, 100 breakers, 2 breakers, or no breakers at all. And that just requires that players place the breaker item, which is also dropped by the electric box breaker. It requires that players place those first before using this. And so now we have this valve handle that we can place here and use to turn it off, and it's turning off. We've got the ID card that we can scan, which will now turn it back on. Again, this fan toggles on and off, depending on how you use it. We can turn it off, and this fan breaker will automatically restart. That's part of the functionality here, that it'll turn back on automatically after a certain time limit. And then we have these breakers. So if we were to try and open the passageway over here, we could see the breakers sparking because we've linked those, and we need to place both of those in, and now it'll stop. And then we've also got the ID card that we can scan to also interact with this. And again, we can link these to lots of different things. We can link these to lights. We can link these to sliding doors. So for example, this sliding barred door here. Go over here to this doorway, and right now it's just got the curtains, but we could place this sliding door right here and then add a button that is linked to the sliding door. Now when we run over here, we can interact with it and pass on through. So that's kind of the main stuff with linking. There are some other objects like the AI that also have some linking functionality, and we'll get into those in this next section here. We're going to go to our inventory here and hop into the characters section. We're going to drag in some of these Grijontons as well as our walk points. So what we could do if we wanted to set up some cool functionalities, we could throw in a guard tower for our snipers, place this guy right up here, and then we could place in a couple of Grijontons down here that are just standing watch. And if we just drop them in like this, they will work, but they're all just going to stand still until they spot a player. And this is the same for the Riot Grijontons as well. If we want to have these enemies patrol a specific area, as well as be able to respawn every so often, what we're going to do is use a master walk point. So this will just be our section with the stationed guards. And then over here, when we get out of the tunnel, we'll have a section for patrolling guards. And this is basically going to determine all of a specific patrol group. And a patrol group can have as many patrol locations as you want. So this is going to be the walk point. So we're going to drag this out into a couple different spots here. And these are just different locations that the guards in this zone will walk to. They'll randomly walk between all these points if they're a part of this zone. So what we do is once we've got all of this stuff in here, we can right click and then select a zone to link our walk point to. And now that we've got all of these linked, what we can do is we can link a Gurjantin to this zone. So this is called master walk point here. And if you wanted to organize these, you could name these different things for specific zones. This could be the outdoor zone. And then we can right click here and select outdoor zone. So now when we play this level, one of the Riot Gurjantin spotted me through the window. How rude. But you can see the other guys are just kind of sitting over here waiting to spot a player. Now if we peek up, we can see he's walking around across all of those points that we designated for him before. And if we run up to him, he'll start attacking us. And the cool thing about this is that if he loses sight of us, he will go back to his patrolling location until he spots another player. And then he'll start chasing again. But Gurjantin doesn't have a zone assigned. Then when he loses sight of a player, he's just going to stand still and wait until he sees somebody else. So setting up zones can be a really, really great way to add more advanced functionality to your levels. All right, so we've got this incredible level, this perfectly like top tier, high security prison with multiple escape routes here. We've got some really intelligent guards that are standing watch. Now what we need to do is add some escape points. So escape points are the actual interactive objects that allow a player to escape from a level and win. In the inventory, if we go down to the escape route section, we've got a couple of different options. We've got the escape boat, the truck, helicopter, and then we've got the escape volume for Jailians and the escape volume for the helicopter. And we also have a finish line. Now the finish line is actually, it's just a prop that you could use to mark a zone like the escape volume. This specifically isn't interactive, but it could be very useful when you're designing your escape locations. And now, no matter where the boat is, it doesn't even have to be in the water. You could just put it in the sky if you wanted to. I don't know why you would, but you could do that. Now, as many players as are able to can hop onto the boat and skirt out, and they'll just sail off, and everyone who's on this boat when it starts driving will bust. The next one, which is similar, is the truck. Now the truck has some additional functionality that you can use to make it even awesomer. If you just drag it in like this, then it works very similar to the boat, where any players that are inside the back of the truck or sitting up in the cab will escape when it starts driving. But you can also link the truck to a garage door. So I could drag in a garage door right here in front of it, along with a button to create some really cool functionality. So we'll just have this floating here on the side for example's sake. So this will be linked to the garage door, and then the truck can be linked to the garage door as well. So now the truck will not allow players to leave unless the garage door has been opened. And you can add different puzzles like the breaker puzzle or an ID card scanner that is required to open up your garage door before players can leave using the truck. So that's some cool functionality that you have there. Next up is the helicopter. Now the helicopter is a cool one because it doesn't have to be used as an escape. You could just have it as a fun vehicle that players get to drive around in. And that's how it works by default. By default, if you just drag a helicopter in, it's just a vehicle that you can drive around. You can fly it for miles if you want. But by adding the helicopter escape volume, you create basically a finish line that will trigger an escape if any players fly into that zone while inside of the helicopter. We could create this escape volume up here in the sky, scale it out to fit kind of the whole island here. And now as soon as we fly up above this area, it'll trigger the escape. Similarly, we also have the escape volume for the Jailians. So let's say you wanted players to escape once they went to a specific location. Let's say this finish line area over here. Or maybe you had a bridge that goes across, and then once you get across the bridge, you've escaped. What you can do is you can drag in the Jailian escape volume, and now when any player walks into this area, it'll trigger the escape as well. Another thing that's worth noting is that none of these escape points will work if your game mode is set to free play. Now, we're going to go over the publishing settings in just a minute, but a quick note is that in your publishing settings up here on the taskbar, you've got game mode. And right now we just have prison escape and free play. But if you set it to free play, then that's just going to be a game that can't end. So all of the escape points are in, you know, you can fly the helicopter, the truck is there, but you can't actually use them to trigger an escape. That would be used for maps like maybe it's just a hangout room or a combat arena or something of that sort where you don't necessarily want there to be a winner. It's just something chill for people to do. So as long as you're set to prison escape, all of these routes will work. So that's just a quick note if for some reason they aren't working. So to publish this level on the Steam Workshop is really, really simple. And there's basically just two steps that we need to go through. The first one is we need a level thumbnail camera. This is a tool object that we can find in the inventory here and that we can drag out into the level. And this is just going to be the location that the thumbnail for our level is taken from. So we've just positioned our camera here, and so our thumbnail is going to look something like this. Now all we need to do is go to the publish and settings right here. We could set our name, we could set the description, and then we could set our game mode as well, like we mentioned before. Prison Escape is the default game mode that's used in the main game, so when approximately half of the players in the match escape, the match will end, and whoever didn't escape in that amount of time doesn't bust. Wow, they're such losers, right? And then we've got some other settings here like player speed multipliers, player health multipliers, and enemy health multipliers. With all of that set up, we can save our level and hit publish. And in just a few moments here, it has now been successfully published to the Steam Workshop. Now, if you want to update a map, that's also the exact same process. All you need to do is hit publish in settings and just hit publish again, and it'll update your map automatically on the workshop. As well as that, if you wanted to change the description, you can do that from here, as well as from the map selection menu when you go into the map editor. And you can also change the thumbnail as well if you want by just moving the thumbnail camera to a different location. All right, and there we have it. Now we are in our incredible map. We've got a whole bunch of different escape routes that we could choose from. I think I'm gonna go with the digging route. I'm gonna dig out over here, and then I think I'm gonna go and use the truck. I get out here, I hop out. Oh, he's patrolling because we set up a patrol zone. Now I'm gonna run away. Oh, and the sniper's sniping me because we put a sniper in the map too. And we gotta get into the truck. We gotta get into the truck to escape. We could sit down. Oh, but we can't drive it because it's being blocked by this door. So now the garage door is open and we can skirt out, and look, we're trying to ride on, and it's flying because we haven't built any bridge or anything. There's so much more that we could do to make this level better. You can test out your work in progress levels without even publishing them. So if we were to create a new map called test, we can save this and then exit. And this level is immediately available if we go into our host menu and then show work in progress levels. And if we scroll all the way to the side, we'll see this test level here. So the next thing I want to touch on is the Find Maps featured levels screen. So this screen is going to feature levels that are either original featured levels that were created by Warp to kind of show off the capabilities of the level editor, as well as maps that are being featured that maybe won map creation contests in our Discord server. So be sure to join the official CUFFBUST Discord server, where we'll be doing some different map creation contests, as well as other just cool featured levels that that the community has been really enjoying. So I just thought that would be worth mentioning because there's a possibility that your levels could get featured here as well, and that would be pretty neat. So next I'm just going to go over a handful of other random tips that didn't make as much sense to put into the main structure of this video, and we're just going to go through a handful of additional tips and stuff that I thought might make sense to talk about. So one thing that's worth noting, on the map screen here you can rename your level as well as set the description. You can delete and duplicate levels as well, and you can view the listing on Steam. So this will take you straight to where the level has been published, so you can make sure that it's visible, or you can put in, you know, you could check your comments, things like that, as well as just hop into the level. And now I'm gonna go over a couple of other interesting features inside of the levels here. So one kind of level that's been really common with our testers has been parkour levels. So we've added a couple of features that make it a bit easier to create parkour themed levels and obbies and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one of our obstacle course prefabs here. We've got an escape volume up at the very top because this is going to be our finish point. But if a player falls off midway through, we want them to actually respawn. So what we could do is we can add in a checkpoint volume, scale it down to the right size, and now we've got this checkpoint. And then what we can do is we can put in an additional one up here maybe, and then also put in a respawn volume. The way that this works is when a player touches a respawn volume, they go back to their respawn location. So if you touch the respawn volume after never touching a checkpoint, you haven't run into any checkpoints at all, you'll go back to your original spawn location. But when you run into a checkpoint, your spawn location is updated to that new spot. Now, if a player hits this checkpoint and then they fall down into the respawn area, they'll get reset to this location here. If they keep on going and they get to another checkpoint and then they fall off, they'll be respawned back at the new checkpoint that they got to. If a player was to, go back from this checkpoint and recollide with a previous checkpoint, it's not going to update to that location. Checkpoints can only be used once, so you're going to be respawned at the most recent one you collided with that hasn't already been collided with. Another fun one to mention that I'd like to make a couple of notes on are decals. So we talked briefly earlier about the decals and kind of how these work. The work is basically just cool little symbols that you can use to decorate your level or indicate different things in your level. Maybe there are Gurjantans. Your players they're about to walk into a combat arena. Well, then you could put up a Gurjantan symbol if you wanted. So what's cool about decals is they can be placed on just about anything. There are a couple of objects that decals won't appear on, for example, players, and some moving objects as well. Now, the thing that's a little bit weird about how decals work is because they take up essentially a volume of space and are plastered across different objects, their scale matters. So you wanted a fire, you want it like right here, kind of like coming up out of the ground. You can see these lines stretching on the sides. Now, this is because this fire takes up this whole area. It's a large volume so that it can be pasted across multiple things in more interesting ways like so. But if we were to undo that and we just wanted it on this wall, what we would need to do is actually scale this down so that it doesn't take up as much space and sits more flush with the surface that we're trying to stick it onto. This also means that the rotation matters. If we were to go to the wall on the other side here and we wanted to have this Jalian head, you might see that it looks a little bit not like a Jalian. And so if we were to rotate this 90 degrees, now we can see it pop up on the wall just fine. And there we have it. Just a couple of additional things. We're planning on adding additional content to the level editor, maybe adding new objects that you can place into your levels or updating some of the functionality. So if we make major content updates for the map editor here, I will make additional tutorials explaining how to use those. A great resource is just the in-game wiki. So if you need to take a quick look at things, this would be a great place to go. There's a lot of information in here about different key bindings and shortcuts and additional explanation that I didn't give in this video. So be sure to read through this as well to get really familiar with how this all works. And as well as that, be sure to join the Discord server because we've got dedicated chats for the level editor where you can talk with other creators that are creating custom content for the game. So you can get inspiration, you could talk with people and have them help test your levels out, as well as being able to take part in the different themed map creation contests that we'll be hosting in the Discord server. Be sure to subscribe, play the game, make some cool levels, and yeah, hope to see them featured soon. It'll be cool. I can't wait to play them.